There's a part of you you've never met, a part you've kept hidden, even from yourself. It knows your darkest thoughts, your secret desires, and the parts of you you'd rather pretend don't exist. It lives in the corners of your mind, whispering in ways you barely notice, shaping your decisions, your relationships, and even your future. Carl Jung had a name for it. He called it the shadow. And here's the thing, no matter how much you try to ignore it, your shadow will find a way to make itself known. Sometimes it appears in the people who irritate you for no clear reason, sometimes in the mistakes you keep repeating, and sometimes in the things you swear you'd never do. Jung believed that facing this hidden self is not just a psychological exercise, it's the key to living a truly authentic life. But there's a catch. The shadow doesn't come quietly. It resists, it hides, and it fights to remain unseen. In the next few minutes, we're going to step into the darkness together. We'll uncover what the shadow really is, the clever ways it hides from you, and how it controls your life from behind the scenes. You'll learn how to spot its fingerprints on your thoughts and actions, why the people you dislike the most might be showing you something about yourself, and how the very traits you've been rejecting could hold the power you've been searching for all along. But be warned, once you see the shadow, you can't unsee it. You might realize that the version of you've been showing to the world is only half the story, and that the other half is stranger, more powerful, and far more human than you ever imagined. So if you're ready, let's step into Jung's world, into the part of the psyche that's been with you since the day you were born. Stay with me until the end, because the final part of this journey will give you a tool Jung believed could completely transform the way you see yourself. A tool that turns the shadow from your greatest enemy into your greatest ally. Ready? Let's begin. Carl Gustav Jung was not an ordinary psychologist. Born in Switzerland in 1875, he grew up surrounded by myths, folklore, and religion. His father was a pastor, and his mother, well, she had a fascination with the mystical. From a young age, Jung sensed there was more to human beings than what we see on the surface. He noticed something in himself, dreams so vivid they felt more real than waking life, strange inner figures that seemed to have their own personalities. When he became a psychiatrist, Jung worked closely with Sigmund Freud. Together they explored the depths of the unconscious. But there was a problem. Freud saw the unconscious mostly as a container for repressed desires, things society told us were forbidden. Jung saw something bigger. He believed the mind wasn't just personal, it was also collective. Beneath our personal memories lies a deeper layer we all share, a kind of psychic inheritance. Inside, it live universal patterns, characters, and stories. These are the archetypes. And among these archetypes, Jung found one that fascinated and frightened him the most: the shadow. The shadow, he realized, wasn't just a symbol from myths or religion. It was real, alive inside each of us. It held the parts of ourselves we rejected, our anger, our envy, our fears, our shame, but also our strength, our creativity, our power. Jung's own life gave him proof. He faced his shadow during a period of deep personal crisis. For years, he explored his dreams, visions, and fantasies, writing them down in what later became known as the Red Book. In those pages, he met dark, mysterious figures. They spoke to him. They challenged him. Some terrified him. And slowly, he began to understand They were all parts of himself. Jung came to believe that ignoring the shadow is dangerous. When we repress it, it doesn't disappear. It leaks out in ways we can't control, through anger at others, through destructive habits, through the moments we say, "I don't know what came over me." He warned that if we don't face the shadow consciously, it will run our lives from the background. But here's the twist. If we dare to face it, if we integrate it, the shadow becomes a source of power. It makes us whole. This was Jung's great insight, the path to becoming our true self, what he called individuation, requires a descent into the dark, not to destroy it, but to bring it into the light. And the question is, how do you know when your shadow is at work in your life? How do you recognize something that, by its very nature, hides from you? That's what we're about to uncover. Imagine a box you've been carrying since childhood. Every time someone told you, "Don't do that, that's not nice," or "That's not you," you took a piece of yourself and put it inside the box. At first, it was small things. A burst of anger when you didn't get your way. A jealous thought when a friend got the attention you wanted. Maybe the time you were loud and someone told you to be quiet. Over time, the box grew heavier. You put in the ambition that made others uncomfortable, the sadness you didn't want to burden anyone with, the impulses that didn't match the good person you thought you should be. This box is your shadow. Jung said it's made of everything we've pushed away because it didn't fit our self-image. It's not just bad traits. Sometimes it's positive qualities too, strength, boldness, sensuality, that we've been taught to hide. The shadow forms early. A child naturally wants to explore every emotion, every role. But to survive in a family, a school, a society, we learn which parts are rewarded and which are punished. We keep the rewarded parts in the light. We hide the punished parts in the dark. And here's the paradox. The more we deny the shadow, the more it controls us. Have you ever met someone who insists they're never angry, yet seems constantly irritated? Or someone who preaches kindness but is secretly judgmental? That's the shadow leaking out. It shows up in subtle ways: sarcasm, passive-aggressive comments, a sudden emotional outburst, a strange dream that leaves you unsettled. Sometimes it's not subtle at all. The quiet, polite person who one day explodes, the loyal partner who suddenly cheats, the good guy caught in a scandal. The shadow loves to play in the dark, but it's not only destructive, it's also where our hidden talents live. Think of the shy person who's secretly an incredible performer, or the overthinker who, when they embrace their sensitivity, becomes an extraordinary artist. Jung believed the shadow is morally neutral. It's raw energy. It can destroy, or it can create. What matters is whether we face it. But here's the challenge. The shadow doesn't like to be seen. It hides in projection. When we judge someone harshly, it's often because they're showing us a part of ourselves we've rejected. You might say, "I can't stand people who are selfish." But if you look deeper, maybe there's a part of you that wishes you could put yourself first more often. Or you might say, "I hate arrogant people." But maybe you've buried your own confidence so deep that seeing it in others feels threatening. This doesn't mean every judgment is projection. But when an emotion is intense, when someone gets under your skin in a way you can't explain, that's a clue. Another place the shadow appears is in your dreams. Jung studied dreams obsessively. He noticed that shadow figures often appear as people of the same sex, sometimes as rivals, enemies, or even frightening strangers. These figures challenge you, block you, or force you into uncomfortable situations. In waking life, the shadow might emerge in moments when you lose yourself. You say something you regret. You do something out of character. You think, that wasn't me. But it was you. It was the part you've been keeping in the dark. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. You can't get rid of your shadow. You can only integrate it. And integration doesn't mean acting out every impulse. It means acknowledging the shadow's existence, learning from it, finding healthy ways to express what it's been holding. Because if you don't, the shadow will find its own way out, and it usually won't be pretty. The good news? Once you start to see it, the shadow becomes less of an enemy and more of a guide. It points you toward the parts of yourself you've abandoned, the parts that, if reclaimed, can make you more whole, more alive, more you. And now that we've seen what the shadow is, the real question is, how do you catch it in the act? How do you spot it moving in your thoughts, your words, your relationships before it takes control? That's where we're heading next. The shadow is clever. It rarely walks into the room and announces itself. Instead, it slips through the cracks of your everyday life, wearing disguises. One of its favorite tricks is projection. When you project, you see your own hidden traits in someone else, but you think they belong to them. You meet someone and instantly dislike them. You don't know why. They haven't done anything to you. But something about them feels wrong. Look closer. That something might be a trait you've buried in yourself. A man who rejects his own sensitivity might think other men are too soft. A woman who hides her ambition might feel threatened by successful women. Jung said that what irritates us most in others often points to what we can't face in ourselves. Another disguise the shadow wears is the emotional trigger. Ever notice how some comments just roll off your back while others feel like a knife? That knife is a clue. It's cutting into an old wound, something the shadow has been guarding for years. If someone calls you lazy and you know you're not, you shrug it off. But if they hit on a trait you secretly fear might be true, you'll react hard. That overreaction is the shadow saying, "You've touched my hiding place." Then there are the moments when you become someone else. You snap at a friend. You make a choice you never thought you'd make. You think, "I don't know what came over me." What came over you was the shadow taking the wheel. The shadow also loves to appear in dreams. It might show up as a rival, a dark figure, or even an animal. Sometimes it's aggressive. Sometimes it's just watching you. Jung believed these figures aren't random. They're messages. They're showing you what you've left behind. And then there's the shadow's most dangerous move: possession. This is when you're no longer just seeing the shadow in others or feeling its nudge. You become it. You justify cruelty because they deserved it. You manipulate without thinking it's wrong. You lie and tell yourself it's harmless. When the shadow possesses you, you're convinced you're right, even when you're not. That's why seeing the shadow is so hard. It feels like it's not you. It feels like the problem is out there in someone else. But here's the truth. The shadow lives in all of us. No exceptions. And here's the good news. Once you can spot its patterns, you can work with it instead of letting it control you. The next step is learning how to do exactly that. And when you hear how, you might realize the shadow isn't your enemy at all, but the missing piece you've been searching for. So how do you face something that doesn't want to be seen? How do you work with a part of yourself that hides in the dark? This is where shadow work begins. Shadow work isn't about fixing yourself. You're not broken. It's about becoming whole. It's the process of meeting the parts of yourself you've abandoned and inviting them back in. Jung believed that if you wanted to grow, you had to go down before you could go up. You had to step into the darkness willingly. The first step is awareness. You can't work with what you can't see. Start paying attention to your reactions, especially the strong ones. The next time someone makes you angry, jealous, or defensive, pause. Ask yourself, what exactly am I reacting to? And where does that live in me? This is not comfortable. The shadow doesn't like being cornered. It will try to convince you the problem is with them, not you. That's why you need honesty, ruthless honesty. A second step is journaling. Write down your triggers, your dreams, your moments of regret. Don't filter them. Don't write what you should feel. Write what you actually feel, even if it's ugly, especially if it's ugly. Those pages are where the shadow starts to speak. Dreams are another gateway. Keep a notebook by your bed. When you wake, write down whatever you remember, even fragments. Over time, patterns emerge, recurring characters, settings, themes. Jung saw dreams as the language of the unconscious. Your shadow will use them to get your attention. Then comes the practice of active imagination. This was one of Jung's most powerful tools. In active imagination, you take a figure from your dreams, or even a strong emotion, and you imagine having a conversation with it. You let it speak. You ask questions. You don't control it. You listen. This can feel strange, even unsettling, but that's the point. You're letting the shadow show you what it's been holding. Another form of shadow work is finding safe ways to express the traits you've repressed. If you've hidden your anger, try martial arts or intense exercise. If you've buried your creativity, start a small art project. The idea is not to unleash chaos. It's to give the shadow a healthy outlet. And finally, find someone you can talk to who understands this work. It could be a therapist, a mentor, or a trusted friend who won't judge you. The shadow thrives in isolation. Speaking it aloud breaks its hold. But here's the warning Jung gave. Shadow work is not about indulging every impulse. Integration is not the same as acting out. The goal is to own your shadow, not let it own you. And something powerful happens when you do. The traits that once sabotaged you can become strengths. The energy you spent hiding parts of yourself becomes fuel for your growth. You stop pretending to be a perfect image of who you think you should be, and start living as the complete, complex human you actually are. And that's when the shadow changes. It's no longer an enemy in the dark. It becomes a guide, a protector, even a source of creativity and strength. But what does that transformation feel like? How do you know when you've truly integrated the shadow? That's where our journey ends and begins. Integration isn't a single moment. It's not like one day you open the door Shake hands with your shadow, and you're done. It's a relationship, a lifelong dialogue. But there comes a point when you feel it. The things that used to trigger you don't have the same grip. You no longer run from certain feelings. You meet them. You understand them. The shadow that once felt like an enemy now feels like a part of you that's been waiting for acceptance. And when you accept it, something shifts. Your confidence is deeper. Your choices are truer. You stop living just to please others. You become whole. And here's the real secret Jung left us. Wholeness is more powerful than perfection. Perfection is brittle. It shatters under pressure. Wholeness bends, adapts, survives. When you walk with your shadow, you are not pretending to be light. You are carrying light into the darkness. And that's rare. That's magnetic. That's the kind of presence that changes not just your life, but the lives of everyone around you. The shadow will always be there. But once you've made peace with it, you'll find it's not a prison. It's a source of freedom. If this journey into the hidden side of the mind has sparked something in you, remember, this is only the beginning. There's so much more to explore. On this channel, Soul of the Mind, we dive into the deepest layers of psychology, spirituality, and self-discovery. So, if you're ready to keep exploring, subscribe now. Because the next time we meet, we'll go even deeper. And you might just find another part of yourself you didn't know was there.